The handcuffs snapped shut around her wrists, cold metal biting into brown skin under the fluorescent library lights. "You're under arrest for loitering," Officer Sullivan declared, his voice sharp with authority. What he didn't know, if the woman he was dragging out in cuffs had written the very laws he was violating. 1 in 3 black women report being racially profiled in public spaces. Today, a state senator became that statistic. But before we reveal how this ends, subscribe and comment what city you're watching from, because this story needs to travel everywhere. You need to pack up, now. Evelyn Washington looked up from her laptop. The security guard Mitchell, according to his name tag, stood 3 feet away, arms crossed tight across his chest. "I'm sorry," Evelyn kept her voice even. Professional. "Is there a problem?" "You've been here 4 hours." Mitchell's eyes darted toward the circulation desk. "Head librarian says that's too long." Evelyn glanced at her watch. 2:47 p.m. She'd arrived at 10:30 a.m. "The library doesn't close until 6, she said. "I'm researching education funding disparities. I haven't made any noise. I haven't bothered anyone. What exactly am I doing wrong?" Mitchell shifted his weight. His radio crackled. Behind him, Margaret Thornton, the head librarian, was on her phone, staring directly at Evelyn. "Look, lady, I don't want trouble." "Then there won't be any," Evelyn said. "Because I'm using a public library for its exact intended purpose." Mitchell's jaw tightened. He turned and walked back to Thornton. They spoke in heated whispers. Thornton's hand trembled slightly as she gripped her phone. An elderly black man sitting near the periodicals lowered his newspaper. He caught Evelyn's eye and shook his head slowly. He'd seen this before. Evelyn returned to her screen, but her hands were shaking now. She'd felt this weight as before. Look at the suffocating pressure of being watched, judged. Suspected for nothing more than existing in a space someone else decided she didn't belong. She was 42 years old. She had a law degree from Stanford and a master's in public policy from Georgetown. She'd spent 5 years on the California State Senate Criminal Justice Reform Committee. She'd written bills that mandated implicit bias training body camera policies and civilian oversight boards, and right now none of that mattered, because all Margaret Thornton saw was a black woman who'd been sitting too long. Evelyn pulled up a new document and started typing Personal Incident Report, Riverside Public Library, Racial Profiling in Progress. Her daughter's voice echoed in her head. Maya was 16 now, sharp and fearless. Last month she'd asked, "Mom, why do white people always watch us in stores?" Evelyn had given her the talk, the same talk her mother had given her. The same talk black mothers had been giving their children for generations. Stay polite, keep your hands visible, don't give them a reason. But what reason did she need to give? She was reading, researching, breathing while black. The library doors opened, heavy boots on tile. 2 officers entered and Evelyn's stomach dropped. The first officer was tall and broad, early 40s, with a crew cut and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. His nameplate read Sullivan. The second officer was younger, lean, with nervous eyes that kept scanning the room. His tag said Parker. Thornton pointed directly at Evelyn. Sullivan's hand moved to his belt as he approached. Parker hung back, uncertainty written across his face. "Afternoon, ma'am." Sullivan's voice was flat, mechanical. "We received a call about someone loitering. I need to see some identification." Evelyn closed her laptop carefully. She met his eyes. "On what legal grounds are you requesting my identification, officer?" Sullivan's expression hardened. "I'm not requesting. I'm telling you. Show me your ID." "Under the 4th Amendment," Evelyn said, her voice calm and clear. "You need reasonable suspicion of a crime to demand identification. I'm in a public library during operating hours using public resources for their intended purpose. What crime do you suspect me of committing?" The teenager by the window pulled out his phone. Started recording. Parker cleared his throat. "Sully, maybe we should just... Honey, stay back, Parker." Sullivan's eyes never left Evelyn. "Ma'am, loitering is a violation of California Penal Code Section 647. The librarian says you've been here for hours without checking out any books. That's loitering." "Actually, it's not." Evelyn's heart was pounding, but her voice remained steady. Section 647 requires intent to commit another crime or behavior that obstructs public use. I've done neither. I'm conducting research, which is protected activity in a public space. You have no legal grounds to detain me. An older white woman near the computer stations whispered loudly, "She's right. I've been here longer than her." Sullivan's face flushed red. "Are you refusing to cooperate with a police investigation?" "I'm exercising my constitutional rights," Evelyn said. "Am I being detained or am I free to go? I'm out." "You're being detained for investigation." Then I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right to remain silent and my Sixth Amendment right to legal counsel. The elderly black man stood up. Officer, I've been coming to this library for 40 years. I've never seen anyone arrested for reading. Sir, sit down, Sullivan snapped. She hasn't done anything wrong, the man insisted. Final warning, sit down. The teenager's voice called out, Yo, I'm live streaming this. 12,000 people watching. Sullivan spun toward Evelyn. Stand up. Hands behind your back. For what crime, officer? Obstruction of justice. Resisting arrest. Evelyn's eyes widened. I'm sitting in a chair. I haven't moved. How am I resisting? Stand up. Parker stepped forward, his voice shaking. Sully, we should call the sergeant. I said stay back. Sullivan's hand moved closer to his weapon. Last chance, lady. Stand up or I'm pulling you up. The library had gone silent. Every eye was on them. The teenager's phone was recording. The elderly man had his hand over his mouth. The white woman was dialing someone, and Margaret Thornton stood frozen behind her desk, her face pale, her hands trembling. Evelyn rose slowly, deliberately, her movements careful and measured. I am complying under duress. I am not resisting. I am unarmed. I am exercising my constitutional rights. Sullivan grabbed her arm and spun her around. Pain shot through her shoulder. She gasped but didn't cry out. Hands behind your back. She complied. The handcuffs clicked shut. Cold metal? Too tight. This is wrong, the elderly man shouted. This is wrong. Someone call the ACLU, the white woman yelled. The teenager, chat is blowing up. This is viral already, officer. Sullivan ignored them all. He yanked Evelyn toward the door, her laptop and research materials still scattered across the table. My belongings, Evelyn started. You'll get them at the station, Sullivan said. Move. Down. Outside, the afternoon sun was blinding. A crowd had gathered library patrons. People from the coffee shop next door, a woman with a stroller who had her phone out recording. A young Latina woman in a press badge pushed through the crowd. Maya Rodriguez, Riverside Tribune. Officer, what are the charges? No comment, Sullivan said, forcing Evelyn toward the patrol car. Ma'am, what's your name? Rodriguez called out. Evelyn looked at her. Document everything, every second. This matters. Sullivan shoved her head down into the back seat. Stop talking. The door slammed. Through the window, Evelyn watched the crowd grow. Phones everywhere. The teenager was still streaming. Rodriguez was filming. The elderly man was shouting at Parker, who looked like he wanted to disappear. And in that moment, sitting in the back of a police car, handcuffs cutting into her wrists, her shoulder throbbing, Evelyn Washington felt something shift inside her. Not fear. Not anymore. Rage. The kind that clarifies. The kind that focuses. The kind that changes things. The ride to the station took 11 minutes. Sullivan drove in silence. Parker stared out the window, his reflection showing deep discomfort. Evelyn counted her breaths. Documented everything mentally. Times, statements, violations. She'd spent 5 years listening to police chiefs promise reform. 5 years hearing officers swear they understood implicit bias. 5 years watching bills pass with fanfare only to die in implementation, and now she was living proof of why those reforms weren't enough. When they pulled into the station, Sullivan opened her door roughly. Out, she stepped out carefully. He gripped her arm too tight unnecessarily and pulled her toward the building. Inside, the booking area smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. A desk sergeant looked up, middle-aged and weathered. What you got? He asked, bored. Loitering, obstruction, resisting arrest, Sullivan said. The sergeant raised an eyebrow. Resisting? She looks pretty cooperative to me. She's a smartass, Sullivan muttered. Thinks she knows the law better than we do. Evelyn spoke, her voice clear and calm. I do know the law, Sergeant. I helped write it. And right now, Officer Sullivan is violating California Government Code Section 8115.2, which makes him personally liable for civil rights violations committed under color of authority. The room went silent. The sergeant set down his pen. Parker turned white. Sullivan stepped closer to Evelyn, his face inches from hers. You think you're special? You think you're better than... He caught himself. The word hung there unspoken, but understood by everyone in the room. Evelyn held his gaze. Her voice was quiet, dangerous. Finish your sentence, Officer Sullivan. Say what you really mean. Sullivan's hands balled into fists. His jaw worked. Then he turned away, breathing hard. Processor, he told the sergeant. I'll write the report. He walked out, slamming the door behind him. Parker stood frozen, looking at Evelyn with something like horror. The sergeant studied her for a long moment. You really a lawyer or senator? Yes, Evelyn said quietly. State Senate, Criminal Justice Reform Committee, chair. Parker's face went from white to green. The sergeant closed his eyes. Jesus Christ. No, Evelyn said. Just a black woman trying to read in a library. The booking process took 2.5 hours. Fingerprints, the ink smeared across her fingers like accusation. Mugshot, the flash burning her eyes. Personal property inventory, her wedding ring, her watch, her phone with 37 missed calls. In the holding cell, she sat alone on the cold metal bench. The walls were covered in scratches. Names, dates, messages. Innocent 2019. They lied, call my mama. I didn't do nothing. How many people had sat here? How many had been arrested for nothing? How many didn't have her education, her resources, her platform? The door clanged open. A young officer female, black early 20s, stepped in. Senator Washington. Her voice was barely a whisper. I'm Officer Jenkins. I wanted to say I'm sorry. What happened today? It's not right. Evelyn looked at her. How long have you been on the force? 8 months. Have you seen this before? Jenkins hesitated, then nodded. Every week, different people? Same story. We're trained better, we're supposed to be better, but some of the old guys... She trailed off. What's your first name? Evelyn asked. Alicia. Alicia, I need you to remember something. You're going to face a choice soon. Maybe tomorrow, maybe next week. You're going to see something wrong, and you're going to have to decide whether to speak up or stay silent. When that moment comes, remember today. Remember that silence is complicity. Alicia's eyes filled with tears. Yes, ma'am. And Alicia, document everything. Names, dates, incidents. Keep a journal they can't access. Because when this system finally breaks, and it will break, we're going to need people like you to testify about what really happens. Alicia nodded and left quickly. Evelyn leaned back against the cold wall. Her phone buzzed in the property bag outside. She could hear it vibrating. Again, again, again. The teenager's live stream had gone viral. She knew it without checking. She could feel it the way the atmosphere in the station had shifted. Officers passing by her cell were whispering, looking, realizing. Another hour passed. The cell door opened again. This time, it was a lieutenant white 50s expensive suit under his uniform jacket. Senator Washington? His voice was smooth, rehearsed. I'm Lieutenant Morrison. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. You're free to go, immediately. All charges dropped. Evelyn stood slowly. Misunderstanding. That's what we're calling it. Officer Sullivan made an error in judgment. Officer Sullivan violated my 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment rights. He used excessive force during a wrongful arrest. He failed to identify reasonable suspicion or probable cause. He made racially motivated assumptions that led to unlawful detention. That's not a misunderstanding, Lieutenant. That's a civil rights violation. Morrison's professional smile faltered. We can discuss this. We will discuss this, Evelyn said, in front of the city council, in front of the press, in front of every citizen who needs to know that a state senator can be arrested for reading and released only after someone realized who she was. What happens to everyone else? Lieutenant, the people who don't have titles and press coverage. What happens to them? Morrison had no answer. That's what I thought, Evelyn said. Now give me my belongings. I have work to do. They returned her possessions in silence. Her phone showed 63 missed calls now. Messages flooded in colleagues, staff members, journalists, civil rights organizations. 3 text messages stood out. Chief of Staff, Marcus Senator, I've been trying to reach you for 3 hours. The video is everywhere. CNN is calling. So is the governor. What do you need? Her daughter, Maya. Mom, I saw the video. I'm so angry I can't breathe. Please tell me you're okay. Please tell me you're going to make them pay. Unknown number, Senator Washington. This is Thomas Chen. I was in the library today. I filmed everything from a different angle. I have footage they don't know exists. Call me. Evelyn stood outside the police station in the fading evening light. The sky was orange and purple, beautiful and indifferent. Across the street, Maya Rodriguez was waiting with a camera crew. Senator Washington, Rodriguez called out. Do you have a statement? Evelyn could walk away. She could go home, shower off the fingerprint ink and the institutional smell, hold her daughter, and process this privately. But when she closed her eyes, she saw that holding cell. Those scratched messages. I didn't do nothing. She thought of all the people who'd sat where she sat today. All the people who'd been arrested for existing while black. All the people who'd screamed their innocence into deaf ears. She opened her eyes. She walked toward the cameras. Yes, Evelyn said. I have a statement. The cameras went live. Rodriguez held out her microphone. Evelyn looked directly into the lens. My name is Senator Evelyn Washington. I chair the Criminal Justice Reform Committee for the state of California. 3 hours ago, I was arrested for reading in a public library. I was handcuffed, detained, and booked on false charges because a librarian decided I'd been sitting too long. Because I was calm and educated and knew my rights. Because I had the audacity to exist in a space while black. Her voice didn't shake. It didn't waver. For 5 years, I fought for police reform, body cameras, implicit bias training, civilian oversight, and today I learned that none of it matters if the people enforcing the law don't believe certain citizens deserve its protection. A crowd was gathering now, people filming on phones, cars slowing down. I was released after 3 hours because someone finally realized I'm a senator. But here's what keeps me awake tonight. What about everyone else? What about the single mother arrested for sitting in a park, the teenager stopped for walking in his own neighborhood, the grandfather handcuffed for asking questions? They don't get released with apologies. They get records, fines, trauma. Maya Rodriguez leaned in. What happens now, Senator? Evelyn's expression hardened, focused. Now I do what I was elected to do. The city council meets in 48 hours. I'm calling an emergency session on police accountability, and I'm introducing legislation that will make officers personally liable for rights violations. No more qualified immunity for provable misconduct. No more misunderstandings. No more protecting the system at the expense of the people it's supposed to serve. Some will say you're too emotional, that this is personal. Damn right it's personal, Evelyn said. It's personal for every black person in this country who's been presumed guilty for breathing. It's personal for my daughter who asked me last month why white people always watch us in stores. It's personal for the grandmother who teaches her grandson to keep his hands visible during traffic stops. This has been personal. The question is why it took a senator getting arrested for anyone to care. The crowd behind the cameras was growing. People were nodding, clapping. Someone shouted, "Tell it." "One more question," Rodriguez said. "Do you regret going to the library today?" Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, not with happiness, but with something harder, something that looked like purpose. "No, because now I have evidence. Now I have first-hand experience of what I've been fighting against. Now when police chiefs tell me their officers are trained, when city councils tell me we've done enough. When people say racism isn't systemic, I can tell them about today. I can show them the footage. I can make them see what they've been ignoring." She looked directly into the camera. "They made a mistake when they arrested me. They gave me a story, and stories when wielded correctly become weapons for change." She turned and walked toward her car, leaving the cameras running. The crowd cheering, the moment crystallizing into something that would trend for days. Evelyn drove straight to her office. It was 9:47 p.m. The building was empty except for security. She unlocked her door, turned on the lights, and sat down at her desk. Her laptop still had the research file open from the library. Education Funding Disparities, Riverside County. She closed it. She opened a new document. The cursor blinked in the darkness, and Senator Evelyn Washington began to write the speech that would burn this system down. My name is Senator Evelyn Washington. Today I was arrested for reading. Tomorrow I'm coming for everyone who thinks that's acceptable, and I'm not stopping until this entire structure of injustice is torn down and rebuilt. Because the difference between me and the thousands of others this happens to every year is simple. I have a platform, I have power, and I'm about to use every ounce of it. The words flowed like fire. Facts, data, personal testimony, legal precedents. She wrote for 2 hours straight, her fingers flying across the keyboard. At midnight, her phone buzzed. Marcus, her chief of staff. Marcus, Senator, the video has 4.2 million views. Every major network wants you for morning shows. The governor's office called again. And? You should know. Officer Sullivan has been suspended pending investigation. The librarian was fired, but there's more. Evelyn called him immediately. What more? Marcus's voice was grim. I've been digging. Sullivan has 17 complaints in his file. 17, all involving Black or Latino civilians, all dismissed as unsubstantiated. And Margaret Thornton, she called police on library patrons 9 times in the last 2 years. Want to guess what all 9 people had in common? Evelyn's hand tightened on the phone. This is bigger than today. Way bigger. And Senator, there's something else. I found a contract between the city and a private prison company, Riverside Corrections. They get paid per arrest. And guess who sits on their board? Who? City Councilman Robert Drake. The same councilman who's been blocking every reform bill you've introduced. The pieces clicked into place. The pattern emerged. This wasn't random. This wasn't just bad officers and nervous librarians. This was systematic, intentional, profitable. "Marcus," Evelyn said quietly, "get me everything. Every contract, every board member, every arrest record. I want the full picture." "Already on it. Senator, be careful. If this goes where I think it's going, you're about to make some very powerful people very angry." Evelyn looked at her reflection in the dark window. Her blazer was wrinkled. Her hair had come loose from its bun. She could still see the red marks on her wrists from the handcuffs. "Good," she said. "Angry people make mistakes, and I'm counting on it." She hung up and returned to her speech. But now it wasn't just a speech about police reform. It was a declaration of war. Because while Evelyn Washington had been sitting in that holding cell, she'd realized something crucial. This system didn't just need reform, it needed to be dismantled, and she was exactly the person to do it. The cursor blinked. She kept writing. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in 48 hours everything would change. The clock read 1:47 a.m. when Evelyn's office door burst open. Marcus stood there breathing hard, his tie loose and his usually perfect hair disheveled. He held a manila folder thick with documents. "You need to see this now, he said, dropping the folder on her desk. "I mean right now, Senator." Evelyn looked up from her laptop, her eyes burning from 2 hours of writing. "What is it?" Marcus pulled out a document, his hands shaking slightly. "Riverside Corrections, the private prison company I mentioned, they have a contract with the city that pays them $37 per inmate per day. But here's the kicker. They get a bonus if occupancy rates stay above 85%. Evelyn's stomach turned. "They're incentivizing arrests." "It gets worse." Marcus spread out more papers. "Look at the arrest rates over the past 3 years. They've increased by 42%, but violent crime down, property crime down. So what's driving the arrests?" Evelyn scanned the documents, her eyes widened. "Loitering, trespassing, disorderly conduct, quality of life offenses." "Exactly. Subjective charges that are almost impossible to disprove. And guess which demographics are being arrested for these offenses at 5 times the rate of white residents?" Evelyn didn't need to guess. The numbers were right there in black and white, or rather in black and brown. "How deep does this go?" she asked. Marcus pulled out another document. "City Councilman Robert Drake sits on the Riverside Corrections Board. His wife is a VP at the company. His campaign funded almost entirely by private prison interests. And get this, he's the one who pushed through the contract 3 years ago, the same year arrest rates started climbing." Evelyn leaned back in her chair. The room felt smaller suddenly, hotter. "Drake's been blocking every reform bill I've introduced," she said quietly. "Every single one. I thought he was just conservative. I didn't realize he was profiting from the system." "There's more." Marcus's voice dropped. "I called a friend at the DA's office, off the record. She said there's been pressure to prosecute more misdemeanor cases, to not drop charges even when they're weak. She said it's coming from the top, but no one wants to say it out loud." Evelyn's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Senator Washington, this is Thomas Chen. We spoke briefly after your arrest. I need to meet with you, tonight if possible. I have information you need to see, information that explains why you were targeted." She showed Marcus the message. "You think it's safe?" he asked. "I think if they wanted to hurt me, they had their chance today," Evelyn said. She typed back, "My office, 1 hour." Marcus started pacing. "Senator, if this is what I think it is, we're not just talking about one bad arrest. We're talking about systemic corruption. We're talking about a city government profiting from the imprisonment of its own citizens. If you go public with this—" "When I go public," Evelyn interrupted, "when you go public, you're going to make enemies. Powerful enemies. People who have a lot to lose." Evelyn stood up, walked to her window. The city stretched out below, lights twinkling in the darkness. Somewhere out there, people were sleeping in their beds, trusting that the system would protect them, trusting that justice meant something. "I already have enemies, Marcus. I made them the day I decided to fight for reform. The only difference now is that I have proof." Her phone rang. It was 2:15 a.m. The caller ID showed her daughter's name. "Maya, honey, what are you doing up?" Her daughter's voice was tight, angry. "Mom, I can't sleep. I keep seeing that video. I keep seeing him grab you. I keep thinking about what could have happened if—" "Maya, I'm okay. I'm safe." "But what about next time?" Maya's voice cracked. "What about when you're not on camera? What about when I'm not around, Mom? I'm 16 and I'm scared every time you leave the house because I know this could happen again." Evelyn's throat tightened. She'd spent 5 years fighting for other people's children, fighting to make the world safer for the next generation, and all that time, her own daughter had been carrying this fear. "Baby, listen to me. What happened today, it's exactly why I do this work. It's why I can't stop. Because if a senator can be arrested for reading what happens to everyone else, what happens to kids like you? I know, Mom, I know. I'm scared and I'm angry and I don't know what to do with it. Channel it, Evelyn said. The way I'm about to. You're 16 years old and you're already more politically aware than most adults. You understand what happened today wasn't about one bad cop. It's about a system that sees people like us as threats instead of citizens. So channel that anger. Use it. Because your generation is going to finish what mine started. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, Mom, blow it up. Whatever you're planning, whatever speech you're writing, blow the whole thing up. Evelyn smiled despite everything. I intend to. After hanging up, she turned to Marcus. Call everyone on the Reform Coalition. Tell them we're meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. Tell them it's urgent and they need to clear their schedules. What are you planning? I'm planning to expose every single person who's profiting from this system. I'm planning to show this city exactly what justice looks like when it's not for sale. The office door opened again. A young Asian man in his late 20s stepped in wearing jeans and a Berkeley hoodie. He carried a laptop bag and had dark circles under his eyes. Senator Washington, I'm Thomas Chen. Evelyn gestured to a chair. You said you have information about why I was targeted. Talk. Thomas set his laptop on the desk and opened it. I'm a data analyst. I work for a nonprofit that tracks arrest patterns and demographic disparities. For the past 2 years, I've been documenting every arrest in Riverside County, building a database, and I've noticed something disturbing. He pulled up a spreadsheet. Columns of numbers filled the screen. The library where you were arrested, in the past 18 months, police have been called there 47 times. Want to guess how many resulted in arrests? Tell me, Evelyn said. 32? And want to guess the racial breakdown of those arrested? Marcus leaned in. Let me guess. Majority Black and Latino. 87%, Thomas said. But here's what's really interesting. I cross-referenced those arrests with the library's visitor logs. The actual demographic breakdown of library users is 62% white, 23% Latino, 9% Black, 6% Asian, and other. Evelyn felt her blood run cold. So Black visitors are being arrested at a rate 9 times higher than their representation. Exactly. And it's not just the library. I've found the same pattern at parks, bus stations, shopping centers. Any public space where people can be arrested for subjective offenses like loitering or trespassing. Thomas clicked to another screen. But it gets stranger. I noticed these arrests spike at specific times, usually around the 20th of each month. I couldn't figure out why until I got access to the city's payment schedule to Riverside Corrections. The 20th, Marcus said slowly. That's when they calculate the monthly occupancy rates. Bingo! If the jail population is below 85%, occupancy arrests suddenly increase, always for low-level offenses, always in the final 10 days of the month. It's like clockwork. Evelyn stared at the screen, her mind racing. This is coordinated. Someone is giving orders. That's what I think, Thomas said, but I can't prove it, until today. When you were arrested, I was at the library doing research. I saw everything, and I filmed it from an angle the other cameras didn't catch. He clicked to a video file. Watch this. The video showed the library from a side angle. There was Evelyn at her table. There was Margaret Thornton behind the circulation desk. But the camera was focused on Thornton's face as she made her phone call. Thomas enhanced the audio. Thornton's voice came through thin but audible. Yes, this is Margaret Thornton at Riverside Public Library. I have a situation here. Black female been here for hours refusing to leave. Yes, I know what day it is. Yes, I understand the quota. Send someone now. The room went silent. Quota? Evelyn repeated. She said quota. I've got more, Thomas said. He pulled up another file. I hacked into let's say I gained unauthorized access to the library's email server. Margaret Thornton received a memo 3 weeks ago from the city manager's office. It's vague, but it basically instructs city employees to be vigilant about suspicious activity in public spaces and to not hesitate to contact law enforcement when warranted. That's code, Marcus said. They're telling employees to call the cops on people of color. And it's not just libraries, Thomas continued. I found similar memos sent to park services, public transit supervisors, even school resource officers, all sent within the past 6 months, all with the same vague language about vigilance and enforcement. Evelyn's hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. Who sent these memos? She asked. They're signed by the city manager, Patricia Vance, but I traced the email trail back further. The directive originated from a meeting between Vance the police chief and city councilman Robert Drake. There it was, the connection, the proof. Thomas, Evelyn said carefully, how did you obtain this information? Do you really want to know? He asked. No, she said. I don't, but I need you to give me copies of everything you have, and I need you to be prepared to testify if necessary. Already done. I've got encrypted backups in 3 different locations. And Senator, I'm ready to testify. What they're doing, it's not just illegal, it's evil. They're treating human beings like inventory, like commodities. Someone needs to stop them. Evelyn looked at Marcus. Get me a meeting with the police chief, tomorrow morning, before the coalition meeting. Tell him if he doesn't agree to meet, I'm going straight to the press with everything we have. Marcus pulled out his phone. On it. Evelyn turned back to Thomas. Thank you. You've given me exactly what I needed. Now I need you to go home, stay safe, and wait for my call. This is about to get very loud very fast. After Thomas left, Evelyn and Marcus spent the next 2 hours going through every document, every email, every piece of evidence. By the time the sun started rising through the office windows, they had built an airtight case. It's 5:30, Marcus said, rubbing his eyes. You should get some sleep. I'll sleep when this is over, Evelyn said. Right now I need to shower and change. Then I need to call the governor. The governor, Senator, maybe we should... No more maybe, Marcus. No more careful political calculations. I was arrested yesterday for reading a book. My daughter is scared to leave the house. People are being arrested to meet profit quotas. This stops today. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maya Rodriguez, the journalist. Senator, my editor wants to run a full investigation. I need to interview you on the record. The world needs to hear this story. Evelyn texted back, press conference, City Hall steps, noon today. Bring cameras. Marcus looked at her. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. At 7:30 a.m., Evelyn walked into her home. Her daughter was asleep on the couch, her phone still in her hand, probably having fallen asleep scrolling through social media coverage of the arrest. Evelyn covered her with a blanket and kissed her forehead. In her bedroom, she showered for 40 minutes, scrubbing away the fingerprint ink and the institutional smell. She stood under the hot water and finally allowed herself to cry. Not from sadness, from exhaustion, from anger, from the weight of carrying a burden that should never have existed in the first place. When she emerged, she put on her best suit, navy blue, professional, powerful. She looked at herself in the mirror. Today, she said to her reflection, we end this. At 8:45 a.m., she walked into the police station, not as a suspect this time, as a senator. The desk sergeant from yesterday, the one who'd seen everything, looked up and immediately stood. Senator Washington, the chief is expecting you. She was led to a conference room where Police Chief Dennis Warren sat looking like he hadn't slept either. He was mid-50s, white with silver hair and the kind of face that had spent a career learning to look authoritative. Senator, he said, not standing up, I appreciate you coming. I didn't come for pleasantries, Chief. I came for answers. Warren shifted in his seat. What happened yesterday was unfortunate. Officer Sullivan has been suspended pending a full investigation. We take these matters seriously. Do you... Evelyn sat down across from him. Because Officer Sullivan has 17 complaints in his file. 17. All involving people of color. All dismissed as unsubstantiated. That doesn't sound like taking it seriously. That sounds like covering it up. Warren's jaw tightened. I can't comment on personnel matters. Then let me comment on them, Evelyn said. She pulled out her folder. I have evidence of a coordinated effort to increase arrests of Black and Latino residents to meet occupancy quotas for Riverside Corrections. I have emails, I have testimony, I have video footage of a librarian explicitly mentioning quotas when she called to have me arrested. Warren's face went pale. That's not we don't have quotas. Don't lie to me, Chief. I have proof. The question is whether you're going to cooperate with the investigation or whether you're going down with everyone else. Warren was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, What do you want? I want the truth. Were you aware of the arrangement between the city and Riverside Corrections? I was aware of the contract. I wasn't aware of any incentive structure. That's a lie, Chief. You attended the meeting where this was discussed 6 months ago with City Manager Vance and Councilman Drake. Warren closed his eyes. How do you know about that meeting? I'm a senator. I know a lot of things. Now answer the question. Did you know about the quota system? Warren's shoulders slumped. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Defeated. I knew. I didn't like it, but I knew. Drake said it was about efficiency, about making sure we were using city resources effectively. He said the contract would bring in revenue that could fund more officers, better equipment. He made it sound like it was good for everyone. Except the people being arrested, Evelyn said. I told myself we were only arresting people who were actually breaking laws. Minor laws, but laws. I told myself it was legitimate law enforcement. You told yourself a lie, Evelyn said, and you know it. Warren looked up at her, and for the first time she saw something human in his expression. Shame. What happens now? He asked. Now you resign, effective immediately, and you cooperate fully with the investigation. You testify about everything, the meetings, the orders, the quota system, everything. Do that, and maybe you avoid prison. Refuse, and I guarantee you'll be charged as an accessory to civil rights violations. Warren's hands were shaking. If I testify, Drake will destroy me. He has connections, money, lawyers. And I have the truth, Evelyn said. Which one do you think is more powerful? Warren stared at her for a long time. Then he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a piece of paper. He wrote for several minutes, then slid the paper across to her. It was his resignation letter. I'll testify, he said quietly. I'll tell them everything. But Senator, be careful. Drake isn't just corrupt. He's dangerous. I've seen what he does to people who cross him. Let him try, Evelyn said. She stood up. Your testimony will be heard at the city council meeting tonight, 7 p.m. Don't be late. She walked out of the police station into the morning sun. Marcus was waiting by her car with coffee and a tablet showing the news. It's already trending, he said. Hashtag Justice for Evelyn. Hashtag End Prison Quotas. CNN wants you on at noon. MSNBC at 2. And the governor's office called. He wants to talk. Tell CNN yes. Tell MSNBC yes. And tell the governor I'll call him after my press conference. At 11:45 a.m., Evelyn stood on the steps of City Hall. Behind her were members of the Reform Coalition's civil rights lawyers, community organizers, activists who'd been fighting this battle for years. In front of her were cameras from every major network, dozens of journalists, and a crowd of several hundred people who'd gathered when word spread about the press conference. Maya Rodriguez stood in the front row, her camera ready. At exactly noon, Evelyn stepped up to the microphone. My name is Senator Evelyn Washington. Yesterday I was arrested for reading in a public library. Today I'm here to tell you why that arrest was not a mistake. It was not a misunderstanding. It was the result of a coordinated, systematic effort by the city government to increase arrests of Black and Latino residents in order to meet profit quotas for a private prison company. The crowd erupted. Gasps, shouts, camera flashes exploded. Evelyn raised her hand for silence and continued. I have evidence of emails directing city employees to be vigilant about suspicious activity, which is code for targeting people of color. I have evidence of meetings where city officials explicitly discussed increasing arrest rates. I have evidence of a financial arrangement that pays Riverside Corrections $37 per inmate per day, with bonus payments if occupancy stays above 85%. I have video evidence of a librarian mentioning quotas when she called to have me arrested, and I have testimony from the police chief himself, who has resigned and agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. But this isn't just about me. In the past 18 months, 32 people have been arrested at that same library. 87% were Black or Latino. In the past 3 years, citywide arrests have increased by 42%, not because crime went up, but because the city has a financial incentive to put people in cages. This is not justice. This is not law enforcement. This is human trafficking with a badge. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Tell it. Tonight at 7 p.m. there will be an emergency city council meeting. I am calling for the immediate termination of the contract with Riverside Corrections. I am calling for a federal investigation into civil rights violations. I am calling for the resignation of City Manager Patricia Vance and City Councilman Robert Drake. And I am introducing legislation that will make it illegal for any municipality in California to enter into contracts that incentivize arrests." The crowd began chanting, "Justice now, justice now." Evelyn's voice rose above the noise. "They arrested me thinking I was nobody, thinking I was just another Black woman they could intimidate and silence. They were wrong. But I'm not special. I'm not different. I just have a platform. And I'm using every ounce of that platform to fight for everyone who was arrested before me and everyone who would be arrested after me. This ends today. This ends now. And it ends with us." The crowd exploded into cheers. Evelyn stepped back from the microphone and Marcus whispered in her ear. "Drake just issued a statement calling this a political stunt. He says you're using your arrest to push a radical agenda." Evelyn smiled. "Good. Let him keep talking." Every word he says digs his grave deeper. She turned to the coalition members behind her. Tonight's meeting is going to be chaos. I need you all there. I need every voice, every story, every person who's been harmed by this system. We're going to fill that chamber so full they can't ignore us. An older black woman stepped forward. Her name was Grace Williams, and she'd been organizing in Riverside for 40 years. Senator, my grandson was arrested last year for sitting in a park. They said he was loitering. He's 14 years old. They kept him in juvenile detention for 3 days because we couldn't afford bail. 3 days for sitting in a park. When you speak tonight, you speak for him. You speak for all of us. Evelyn took Grace's hand. I won't let you down. By 6:30 p.m., the crowd outside City Hall had swelled to over 1,000 people. News helicopters circled overhead. Police in riot gear lined the streets. The city council had tried to move the meeting to a smaller venue, but the outcry forced them to keep it in the main chamber. Inside, every seat was filled. People stood in the aisles, sat on the floor, pressed against the walls. Evelyn walked in at 6:55 p.m., and the entire room stood and applauded. Councilman Drake sat at the council table, his face red, his expression furious. City Manager Vance looked like she wanted to disappear. The other council members looked terrified. At exactly 7 p.m., the council president, a nervous woman named Susan Chen, banged her gavel. This meeting will come to order. Due to the extraordinary circumstances, we're suspending normal procedures to address the allegations raised by Senator Washington. Senator, you have the floor. Evelyn stood. She didn't need notes. She'd lived this speech. Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to make this very simple. This city government has been systematically violating the civil rights of its residents in order to profit from their imprisonment. I have proof, and before this night is over, everyone in this room will know exactly who is responsible. She spent the next hour laying out the evidence, the emails, the testimony, the arrest data, the financial arrangements. With every piece of evidence, the crowd's anger grew louder. When she finished, she looked directly at Robert Drake. Councilman Drake, you have built your career on the suffering of the people you were elected to serve. You have profited from their pain. And tonight, that ends. I'm calling for your immediate resignation and a criminal investigation into your conduct. Drake stood up, his face purple with rage. This is a witch hunt. Senator Washington is trying to destroy me because I've opposed her radical agenda. I have done nothing illegal. The contract with Riverside Corrections was approved by this council. It was vetted by lawyers. Everything I've done has been by the book. By the book? Evelyn's voice was quiet but lethal. Tell me, Councilman, which book? Because it's certainly not the Constitution. It's not the Civil Rights Act. Maybe it's your bank book, the one that shows $300,000 in payments from Riverside Corrections over the past 3 years. The crowd gasped. Drake's mouth opened and closed. Those were campaign contributions. Campaign contributions to a sitting councilman who voted on their contract. That's called corruption, councilman. And it's illegal. The crowd erupted into shouts. Resign, resign, resign. Drake looked around the room, realizing he'd lost. His eyes found Evelyn, and the hatred there was palpable. You'll regret this, he said quietly, but the microphones picked it up. Is that a threat, Councilman? Evelyn asked. Because if it is, I'd like it on the record. Drake grabbed his coat and stormed out. The crowd cheered. But Evelyn knew this was just the beginning. Drake wouldn't go quietly. People like him never did. The council voted unanimously to terminate the contract with Riverside Corrections. They voted to launch an independent investigation. They voted to implement immediate reforms. It was after midnight when the meeting finally adjourned. Evelyn walked out into the night air exhausted but energized. The crowd was still there, hundreds of people waiting to thank her, to share their stories, to feel like someone finally heard them. Grace Williams hugged her tight. You did it, baby. You really did it. We did it, Evelyn corrected. This was never about me. This was about all of us. Marcus appeared at her elbow. Senator, you need to see this. He showed her his phone. A news alert. Breaking: FBI announces investigation into Riverside City government for civil rights violations and corruption. Federal prosecutors say arrests could come within days. Evelyn smiled. The system was finally working. But as she climbed into her car and drove home through the dark streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real fight was still ahead. Drake's threat echoed in her mind. You'll regret this. She thought about the file Thomas Chen had mentioned, the one about Officer Thompson and the missing footage, the one about testing grounds. There was more to this story, layers she hadn't uncovered yet, and somehow she knew the library arrest hadn't been random at all. It had been a message, The question was from whom? The message came at 2:47 a.m. 3 days after the council meeting. Evelyn was still awake going through documents at her kitchen table when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her look. Senator Washington, you don't know me, but I know what happened to you. I know because it happened to me too. 2 years ago. Same library, same librarian, same cop. But I didn't have a title to protect me. My name is Shanice Coleman. I spent 6 months in jail because I couldn't afford bail. I lost my job, my apartment, my daughter went to foster care. And I'm not the only one. There are dozens of us. We need to talk. Evelyn stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Meet me at Rosie's Diner on 5th Street, tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. She couldn't sleep after that. She pulled up the arrest records Thomas had compiled and started searching for the name Shanice Coleman. There it was. Arrested for loitering at Riverside Public Library. Arraigned on 3 charges, including resisting arrest and disorderly conduct. Public defender. Bail set at $5,000. Spent 173 days in county jail awaiting trial. Charges eventually dropped, but by then the damage was done. Marcus called at 6 a.m. Senator, we have a problem. Drake hired a PR firm. They're pushing a narrative that you orchestrated your own arrest to gain publicity. They're calling it a political stunt. Let them talk, Evelyn said. I've got something better than spin. I've got victims willing to go on record. How many? I don't know yet, but I'm about to find out. At 7:15 a.m., Evelyn walked into Rosie's Diner. The place was old school, with vinyl booths and a counter with spinning stools. A young black woman sat in the back booth stirring coffee she clearly hadn't touched. She was maybe 25, thin with her hair pulled back tight and circles under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and hard memories. Shanice? Evelyn asked. The woman nodded. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. Evelyn slid into the booth across from her. Tell me what happened. Shanice's hands shook as she spoke. It was April 2 years ago. I had just lost my job at the grocery store. I was applying for new jobs online using the library computers because I couldn't afford internet at home. I was there for maybe 3 hours when the guards started circling. Then the librarian came over and said I needed to leave. Margaret Thornton. Yeah, she said I was making other patrons uncomfortable. I asked who complained, and she couldn't tell me. I said I had a right to be there, and I wasn't leaving. She called the cops. Evelyn listened, her jaw tightening with each word. Officer Sullivan showed up, same one who arrested you. He told me to leave, and I said I had a right to use the library. He said if I didn't comply, I'd be arrested. I said arrested for what? He grabbed my arm. I pulled away. That's when he tackled me, put his knee in my back. I couldn't breathe. I kept saying I couldn't breathe, and he just pressed harder. Shanice's voice broke. Evelyn reached across the table and took her hand. They charged me with loitering, resisting arrest, and assaulting an officer. Assaulting him when all I did was pull my arm away. My public defender told me to take a plea deal, 6 months probation, but I said no, I didn't do anything wrong, so I waited for trial, in jail, because I couldn't afford $5,000 bail. How long? Evelyn asked, though she already knew. 5 months and 28 days. They kept postponing the trial. My daughter was 4 years old. CPS took her because there was no one to watch her. By the time they finally dropped the charges, I'd lost everything. My apartment, my job, my daughter. I'm still fighting to get her back. Evelyn felt rage building in her chest like a physical thing. Where is your daughter now? Foster care? Second family. The first one gave her back because she cried too much. She cries because she wants her mommy, and I can't have her because the state says I'm unstable. I'm unstable because I was arrested. I was arrested because I used a library. It's all connected, and I can't break out of it. Yes, you can, Evelyn said firmly. You just did, by coming forward, by telling your story. Shanice, I need you to testify. I need you to go on record with everything you just told me. Can you do that? Shanice wiped her eyes. Will it help me get my daughter back? I'll make sure of it. I'll personally contact CPS and the family court judge. What happened to you was illegal. Every charge should be expunged, and we're going to make sure everyone knows it. There are others, Shanice said quietly. Women like me. I met them in jail. We all had the same story. Library arrests, park arrests, bus stop arrests, all for nothing. All because we were black and poor and in the wrong place at someone's wrong time. How many others? At least 15 that I know personally, probably more. Evelyn pulled out her phone. I need their names, all of them, and I need you to help me contact them. We're having a press conference in 3 days. I want every single one of you there. We're going to tell the world what this city did to you. Shanice nodded, her eyes fierce now, despite the tears. "I'll do it. For my daughter, for all of us." They spent the next 2 hours at that diner booth, Shanice making calls while Evelyn took notes. By the time they left, Evelyn had 18 names, 18 stories, 18 lives destroyed by a system designed to profit from human suffering. When Evelyn got to her office, Marcus was waiting with more bad news. "Drake's fighting back hard. He's filed a defamation lawsuit against you. $10 million. He's claiming you destroyed his reputation with false allegations." Evelyn laughed bitter and sharp. "False allegations? I have emails. I have testimony. I have bank records. Let him sue. It'll just give me another platform to expose him." "There's more? Someone leaked your home address online. You're getting death threats. Dozens of them. The Capitol Police want to assign you protection." "Accept it," Evelyn said. "But I'm not stopping. If anything, this proves we hit a nerve." Her phone buzzed. Thomas Chen. "Senator, we need to talk. Now, in person, not on the phone. It's about Officer Thompson." Evelyn's pulse quickened. "Where?" "The coffee shop on 8th Street. 1 hour. Come alone." Marcus started to protest, but Evelyn cut him off. "Get me that protection detail. Have them follow at a distance, but I'm meeting him." 53 minutes later, Evelyn walked into a small coffee shop 3 blocks from the Capitol. Thomas sat in a corner booth, his laptop closed, his expression grim. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Evelyn said, sliding in across from him. "Maybe I have," Thomas said. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "I've been digging into the history of these quota arrests, trying to figure out when it started, who initiated it, and I found something that doesn't make sense." "What?" 3 years ago, there was a pilot program. Before Riverside Corrections got the contract, before Drake pushed it through the council, it was called the Public Safety Efficiency Initiative. Very quiet, very low profile. Only ran for 6 months in one district. Let me guess, a district with high minority population. Exactly, and during those 6 months, arrests increased by 63%. All low-level offenses, all subjective charges. It was like a test run to see if the model would work. Evelyn's mind was racing. Who ran the pilot program? That's where it gets weird. The program was supervised by an officer named James Thompson. But 3 years ago, right after the pilot program ended, Thompson disappeared. Disappeared how? Just gone. One day he's on the force, the next day he's not. No resignation letter in his file, no retirement paperwork, no forwarding address. I tried to track him down. No social media presence, no credit card activity, no DMV records. It's like he was erased. Evelyn felt cold. People don't just disappear, Thomas. That's what I thought, so I kept digging, and I found one thing, a police report filed by Thompson's sister 6 months after he vanished. She reported him missing, but the report was closed within a week, marked as unfounded. The sister gave up trying to find him after that. Did you talk to the sister? I tried. She lives in Oregon now. When I called and mentioned Thompson's name, she hung up. I called back. She said if I contacted her again, she'd call the police. She sounded terrified. Someone scared her into silence, Evelyn said. That's what I think. And Senator, there's more. I found archived footage from the police body cameras during the pilot program. Most of it's been deleted, but I recovered some fragments. You need to see this. Thomas opened his laptop and turned it toward her. The video was grainy, time-stamped 3 years earlier. It showed Officer Thompson in a park arresting a young Latino man who was sitting on a bench. What's the problem, officer? The man asked. You're loitering, Thompson said, but his voice was strange, flat, reluctant. I'm eating lunch. That's not loitering. I'm going to need to see some ID. For what? I haven't done anything. The interaction continued escalating until Thompson arrested the man. But throughout the whole encounter, Thompson looked uncomfortable, almost sick. Watch his face, Thomas said. He doesn't want to do this. He's following orders, but he hates it. The video ended. Thomas pulled up another one. Same park, different day. Thompson arresting an elderly black woman for sleeping on a bench. She's homeless, Thomas said. 67 years old, no priors. Thompson arrested her for trespassing in a public park. She spent 3 days in jail. Evelyn watched Thompson's face in the video. Thomas was right. The man looked haunted. What happened to him? Evelyn asked. I think he tried to blow the whistle. I think he saw what the pilot program really was and tried to stop it. And I think someone made sure he couldn't. Made sure how Thomas closed the laptop. I don't know, but Senator, I'm scared. If they could make a cop disappear, what could they do to us? Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "We're not cops. We're not working alone. We have publicity protection power. They can't make us disappear without the whole world noticing." "Are you sure about that?" "No," Evelyn admitted. "But I'm sure about this. If we stop now, if we let fear silence us, then Thompson disappeared for nothing. Shanice lost her daughter for nothing. I got arrested for nothing. And this system keeps destroying lives. I can't accept that. Can you?" Thomas met her eyes. "No, I can't." "So what do? We find Thompson's sister, we convince her to talk, we get her on record, and we expose every single person who was involved in making him disappear." "She's in Portland. That's a 2-hour flight." "Then book us tickets for tomorrow morning, both of us. And Thomas, thank you for not running, for staying in this fight." Thomas nodded. "My parents came here from Taiwan with nothing. They taught me that America was supposed to be different, better, a place where justice actually meant something. I have to believe that's still possible." "It is," Evelyn said. "We're making it possible." When Evelyn got home that evening, her daughter Maya was waiting in the kitchen with a laptop open and fire in her eyes. "Mom, you need to see this," Maya said. "Drake's PR firm is running attack ads. They're saying you're using your arrest to push a radical anti-police agenda. They're saying you're making up stories about quotas. They're calling you a race baiter." Evelyn looked at the screen. There was her face next to inflammatory quotes taken out of context, next to images designed to make her look angry and unreasonable. "They're trying to destroy you," Maya said. "They're trying to make people think you're the problem instead of them." "I know, baby. It's what people do when they're losing. They attack." "But what if it works? What if people believe them?" Evelyn sat down next to her daughter. "Maya, listen to me. I learned something a long time ago. The truth doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be told. We have victims ready to testify. We have evidence. We have documentation. All Drake has is money and lies. And in the end, lies always fall apart." "But what if they hurt you?" "The death threats, Mom. I read some of them. They're talking about killing you." "Which is why I have protection now, and why you're going to stay with Aunt Carol for a few days while this settles down." "I don't want to leave you." "I know, but I need to know you're safe so I can focus on this fight. Can you do that for me?" Maya hugged her tight. "Make them pay, Mom. Make them pay for every person they hurt." "I will, I promise." The next morning, Evelyn and Thomas flew to Portland. They rented a car and drove to a small neighborhood on the east side of the city. Thompson's sister Rebecca lived in a modest house with a neat lawn and a child's bike in the driveway. Evelyn knocked on the door. A woman in her 40s answered her face, immediately closing off when she saw them. "I told you not to come here," she said to Thomas. "Ms. Thompson, please," Evelyn said. "I'm Senator Evelyn Washington. I was arrested 3 days ago in Riverside under the same program your brother tried to expose. I need your help to stop them from doing this to anyone else." Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "You don't understand what you're asking. They'll hurt you. They'll hurt everyone you love. That's what they do." "Who is they?" Evelyn asked gently. Rebecca looked around as if checking for watchers. Then she opened the door wider. "Come inside. Quickly." They sat in a small living room filled with family photos. Evelyn noticed one of a man in a police uniform. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. That must be James Thompson. "My brother was a good cop," Rebecca said. 22 years on the force. He believed in helping people, protecting people. When they started the pilot program, he thought it was about community policing, better engagement with neighborhoods that felt over-policed. But then he realized what it really was. "A quota system," Evelyn said. Rebecca nodded. They were being told to make arrests, not to prevent crime, but to generate numbers. James started keeping records, writing down everything. He was going to blow the whistle, go to the media, expose the whole thing. But before he could, they came for him. "Who came?" Thomas asked. "I don't know. James called me the night before he disappeared. He was scared. Really scared. He said he had evidence that went all the way to the top. He said if anything happened to him, I should tell his story, and then the next day he was gone." "Did you go to the police?" "Of course I did. They said he probably just left town, stress from the job. But James would never leave. Leave without telling me. We talked every week, and his apartment was cleaned out. Not like he packed and left, like someone erased him. All his files were gone, his computer, his notebooks, everything." Evelyn leaned forward. Rebecca, did James ever mention any names, anyone specific who was running the program? Rebecca hesitated. Then she stood up and walked to a bookshelf. She pulled out a photo album and opened it to a specific page. Tucked behind a family photo was a folded piece of paper. This is the only thing I have left. James mailed it to me a week before he disappeared. He said to keep it hidden, to only use it if something happened to him. She handed the paper to Evelyn. It was a photocopy of a document, a memo from the city manager's office to the police department dated 3 years earlier. The memo outlined the Public Safety Efficiency Initiative and included specific arrest targets by neighborhood, by demographic, by month. And at the bottom, 3 signatures: Patricia Vance, City Manager; Robert Drake, City Councilman; and a third name that made Evelyn's blood run cold: Governor William Hart. Before he was governor, when he was still a state senator representing Riverside. "Oh my God," Thomas whispered. Evelyn stared at the document, her mind racing. This wasn't just local corruption. This went to the state level, the governor's office, to come. "This is why James disappeared," Rebecca said, her voice shaking. "He found out that the governor was involved, and they couldn't let that get out." "Do you know where James is now?" Evelyn asked. Rebecca shook her head. "I think he's dead. I think they killed him. And I think if I'd pushed harder to find him, they would have killed me too. So I moved. I changed my name. I tried to forget. But I kept that document because I promised James I would use it if I ever got the chance." "This is that chance," Evelyn said. "Rebecca, I know you're scared. I know you've been living in fear for 3 years, but your brother tried to stop this, and he paid the price. Don't let his sacrifice be for nothing. Let me use this document. Let me finish what he started." Rebecca looked at the photo of her brother on the wall. Tears streamed down her face. "Will it bring him back?" she asked. "No," Evelyn said honestly, "but it will make sure no one else disappears trying to do the right thing. It will make sure James's name is remembered as a hero, not forgotten as a cautionary tale." Rebecca wiped her eyes. "Take it, use it. And Senator, be careful. These people have no limits. They will do anything to protect themselves." "So will I," Evelyn said. "But I'll do it with the truth, and that's more powerful than any threat they can make." On the flight back to California, Evelyn and Thomas barely spoke. They both understood the magnitude of what they'd just uncovered. This wasn't just about Riverside anymore. This was a statewide scandal that implicated the governor himself. "What are you going to do?" Thomas finally asked. "I'm going to call a press conference," Evelyn said. "Tomorrow, and I'm going to release everything. The memo, Rebecca's testimony, the connection to Governor Hart. All of it. He'll destroy you. The governor has resources you can't imagine. Political allies, media connections, legal teams. He'll bury you. Let him try. I have something he doesn't have. I have the moral high ground. And I have people like Shanice, like Rebecca, like James Thompson who deserve justice. That's worth more than any political calculation." Thomas looked out the window at the clouds below. "You're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most reckless." "Maybe both," Evelyn said, "but I'm the person who got arrested for reading, which means I'm the perfect person to burn this system down." When they landed, Marcus was waiting at the airport with news. Senator Governor Hart just announced he's launching an independent investigation into the Riverside Police Department. He's calling for reform and transparency. He's positioning himself as the solution. Evelyn laughed. It was harsh and bitter. "Of course he is. Classic political move. Get ahead of the scandal by pretending to lead the cleanup." "What do you want to do?" Evelyn pulled out her phone and showed him the photo of the memo. Marcus's eyes went wide. "Is that real?" "Completely, and I'm releasing it tomorrow at noon. Call every media outlet. National networks, local stations, newspapers, online platforms. Tell them I have evidence that will bring down the governor. And Marcus, make sure Governor Hart knows I'm coming for him." "Senator, this is career suicide. If you accuse the governor of corruption and it doesn't stick, you're done. Finished. He'll make sure you never hold office again." "I don't care about my career," Evelyn said. "I care about justice. And tomorrow, justice is going to have its day." That night, Evelyn barely slept. She kept thinking about Officer James Thompson, a good cop who tried to do the right thing and paid for it with his life. She thought about Shanice Coleman, who lost her daughter for using a library. She thought about all the people sitting in jail cells right now, arrested on false charges to meet profit quotas, their lives destroyed by a system that saw them as commodities instead of citizens. And she thought about her own daughter Maya, who had to grow up scared in a world that judged her by her skin color instead of her character. At 5 a.m., she gave up on sleep and started writing her statement. Every word was a weapon. Every sentence was a declaration of war. By the time the sun rose, she was ready. At 11:45 a.m., Evelyn stood in front of the Capitol building. Behind her were Shanice Coleman and 17 other women who'd been arrested under the quota system. Beside her was Rebecca Thompson, who'd flown back with them to tell her brother's story. In front of her were cameras from every major news organization in the country. At exactly noon, Evelyn stepped up to the microphone. "My name is Senator Evelyn Washington. 4 days ago, I was arrested for reading in a public library. Today, I'm here to tell you that my arrest was part of a 3-year program designed by Governor William Hart to increase incarceration rates for profit. I have documentation proving the governor's direct involvement in creating a quota system that targeted Black and Latino residents for arrest. I have testimony from the sister of a police officer who tried to expose this program and subsequently disappeared. And I have 18 victims standing behind me who lost jobs, homes, children, and years of their lives because of this system." She held up the memo. This document bears Governor Hart's signature. It outlines specific arrest targets by race and Indian neighborhood. It was created when he was a state senator, and it became the blueprint for the private prison contract in Riverside. The governor has spent the last 3 years profiting from human suffering while campaigning on a platform of criminal justice reform. He is not the solution, he is the architect of the problem. The press corps erupted with questions, but Evelyn wasn't finished. "I am calling for Governor Hart's immediate resignation. I am calling for a federal investigation into his conduct. And I am calling for every person arrested under this quota system to have their records expunged and their rights restored. This ends today. This ends now, and it ends with the truth." She stepped back from the microphone. Shanice stepped forward. "My name is Shanice Coleman. I spent almost 6 months in jail because I used a library computer to look for a job. I lost my daughter to foster care. I lost everything. And the man who signed the order that made this happen is now our governor. I want my daughter back. I want my life back, and I want him held accountable." One by one, the other women stepped forward and told their stories, each one more heartbreaking than the last, each one a damning indictment of a system that had failed them. Rebecca Thompson was last. "My name is Rebecca Thompson. My brother James was a police officer in Riverside. When he discovered this program, he tried to stop it, and 3 years ago, he disappeared. I believe he was murdered to keep the secret buried. Today I'm telling his story so that his death meant something, so that no other officer has to choose between their conscience and their life." By the time they finished, reporters were wiping tears from their eyes. The crowd that had gathered was silent, shocked, angry, and somewhere in the governor's mansion, William Hart was watching his career implode in real time. Evelyn's phone started ringing immediately. News requests, political allies offering support, threats from Hart's team. She ignored all of it, because she'd done what she set out to do. She'd told the truth, and now the whole world was listening. The governor's response came exactly 93 minutes after Evelyn's press conference ended. She was in her office with Marcus and Thomas when the emergency broadcast interrupted every channel. Governor William Hart stood at a podium in Sacramento, his expression grave, his voice measured and calm. "My fellow Californians, I want to address the serious allegations made today by Senator Washington. These accusations are false, politically motivated, and deeply irresponsible. The document she displayed was taken completely out of context. 3 years ago, when I was a state senator, I signed off on a comprehensive public safety review that included multiple policy options. That memo was one of many drafts that was never implemented. To suggest that I authorized or profited from a quota system is not just wrong, it's defamatory." Marcus muted the television. "He's good. He sounds believable." "He's a liar," Evelyn said flatly, "and I can prove it." Her phone rang. It was a blocked number. She answered anyway. "Senator Washington, this is David Chen from the Attorney General's office. I need you to come to Sacramento immediately. The AG wants to meet with you personally." "When?" "Tonight, 9 p.m., and Senator, come prepared to defend every claim you made today. The governor is already threatening legal action." Evelyn hung up and looked at Marcus. "Book me a flight to Sacramento, leaving in 2 hours." "I'm coming with you," Marcus said. "No, I need you here coordinating with the victims. Make sure they have legal representation. Make sure they're protected. Drake and his people are going to come after them now that Hart's involved." Thomas stood up. "Senator, before you go, there's something else you need to know. I got an email an hour ago from an anonymous source. They claim to have proof that Officer Thompson is alive." Evelyn's heart stopped. "What?" "The email says Thompson is in witness protection. That he's been hidden for 3 years because he has evidence that could bring down not just Hart, but a whole network of officials involved in this scheme. The source wants to meet. It could be a trap, Marcus warned. Or it could be the smoking gun we need, Evelyn countered. Where's the meet? Tomorrow night, Oakland, industrial district near the port. The source says, come alone. Absolutely not, Marcus said. Senator, you can't. I can and I will. Set it up, Thomas. And Marcus, stop trying to protect me. I'm not a victim anymore. I'm a weapon, and weapons don't hide. The flight to Sacramento was turbulent. Evelyn stared out the window at the darkening sky and thought about what she was walking into. The Attorney General, Catherine Morrison, was known for being tough but fair. She'd prosecuted corrupt officials before, but she also reported directly to the governor. Where would her loyalties fall? A car was waiting when she landed. The driver was silent professional and drove her directly to the state capitol building. At 9 p.m., the building was mostly empty, just security and a few late-working staffers. She was escorted to a conference room on the 4th floor. Attorney General Morrison was already there, along with 2 federal prosecutors Evelyn didn't recognize. Morrison was in her 50s with steel-gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen every lie a person could tell. Senator Washington, thank you for coming, Morrison said. These are Assistant U.S. Attorneys Jennifer Park and Michael Torres. They're with the Public Corruption Unit out of the DOJ. Evelyn shook hands and sat down. So the feds are already involved. They've been involved for 6 weeks, Park said. We've had an ongoing investigation into the Riverside Corrections contract. Your arrest accelerated our timeline. Then you know I'm telling the truth. We know there's evidence of corruption, Torres said carefully. What we don't know is how far it goes or who's really responsible. The memo you showed today, we need the original. Evelyn pulled out her phone and showed them the photo. The original is in a safe location, along with testimony from Officer Thompson's sister and documentation of his disappearance. Morrison leaned forward. Senator, let me be direct. If you're wrong about Governor Hart, if that memo doesn't prove what you claim, it proves you've just committed political suicide. Hart has already filed a formal complaint with the State Bar Association. He's calling for your removal from office. He's threatening a defamation lawsuit that could bankrupt you. Let him, Evelyn said. I have 18 victims ready to testify. I have arrest records showing the quota system in action. I have financial documents proving Drake profited from the contract. And I have a missing police officer whose disappearance was covered up by people who didn't want the truth exposed. About Officer Thompson, Park said. We need to talk about that because you're not wrong. Evelyn's breath caught. You know where he is. We do. He's been in protective custody for 3 years. He came to us right before he disappeared, with evidence of the pilot program. We placed him in witness protection while we built the case. Then why hasn't he testified? Why let this continue for 3 years? Torres exchanged a glance with Park. Because Thompson's evidence implicated more than just Riverside officials. It showed a pattern across multiple counties, multiple private prison contracts, multiple elected officials. We needed time to map the entire network, and we needed leverage to flip the people at the top. You're using the victims as bait, Evelyn said, her voice cold. You've known about this for 3 years, and you've let it continue so you could build a bigger case. We've been trying to protect victims, Park said defensively. Every arrest we could prevent without exposing the investigation we did, but yes, some people fell through the cracks. That's the reality of building a case this size. Some people, Shanice Coleman lost her daughter. 18 women lost years of their lives. And you call that falling through the cracks? Morrison held up her hand. Senator, I understand your anger, but the reality is we now have enough evidence to bring down an entire corruption network. Riverside was just the beginning. We have proof of similar schemes in Oakland, Fresno, San Diego, all connected, all funded by private prison money, and all leading back to a lobbying firm in Sacramento that has connections to Usul. Let me guess, Evelyn interrupted. Governor Hart. We can't comment on active investigations, Torres said. But what we can tell you is that your press conference today forced our hand. We were planning to move in 3 months. Now we have to move immediately before evidence gets destroyed. Good, Evelyn said. When indictments come down in 72 hours, we'll need you to testify before a grand jury. We'll need the original memo, and we'll need you to do something that might be difficult. What? Morrison looked at her seriously. We need you to walk back your accusations against Governor Hart. Publicly, apologize for overreaching. Make it look like you made a mistake. Evelyn stood up. Absolutely not. I'm not lying for you." "It's not lying," Park said quickly. "It's strategy. If Hart thinks he won, if he thinks he's safe, he'll get careless. We need him to think the threat is over so he doesn't destroy evidence or warn his co-conspirators." "You want me to humiliate myself, destroy my credibility, and let Hart think he beat me all so you can catch him later? No, that's not how this works." "Senator," Torres said, his voice gentle, "I understand this is asking a lot. But if you want everyone involved to face justice, including Hart, we need you to trust us. I don't trust anyone who's been watching people get arrested for 3 years while building a case. You had the power to stop this, and you chose not to. That makes you complicit." Morrison's expression hardened. "That's unfair, and you know it. We've saved hundreds of people from false arrests by quietly intervening. We've prevented this system from expanding to other states. And we've built a case that will result in decades of prison time for everyone responsible. Your way going public making accusations might feel righteous, but it could also let the real criminals escape." Evelyn sat back down. Her hands were shaking with rage and frustration. Every instinct told her to fight, to refuse to burn everything down publicly. But another part of her, the strategic part that had survived 5 years in politics, knew Morrison was right. "If I do this, she said slowly, "I need guarantees. Shanice Coleman gets her daughter back immediately. All 18 women have their records expunged before the weekends. And Officer Thompson testifies publicly so everyone knows he's a hero, not a ghost." "Done," Morrison said. "We can make all of that happen. And one more thing. When you arrest Hart, I get to be there. I get to look him in the eye when he realizes he lost." Park smiled slightly. "I think we can arrange that." Evelyn flew back to Riverside that night feeling hollow and angry. She'd won, but it felt like losing. She'd have to stand in front of cameras tomorrow and pretend she'd been wrong. She'd have to watch Drake and Hart celebrate while she ate crow. But it was temporary. 72 hours. Then the hammer would fall. When she got home at 2 a.m., Maya was still awake, waiting in the kitchen. "Mom, social media is destroying you. They're saying you made up the memo. They're saying you doctored evidence. Dad called. He's worried about you." Evelyn hugged her daughter. "Baby, I need to tell you something. And you can't tell anyone. Not your friends, not social media, nobody. Can you promise me that?" Maya nodded. "Everything I said today was true, but I'm about to pretend it wasn't. I'm going to apologize to the governor. I'm going to look weak, and people are going to think I failed. But I need you to know that it's all part of a bigger plan. In 3 days, everything changes. Can you trust me?" "I trust you," Maya said. "But Mom, it's going to be bad, really bad. People are going to say terrible things." "I know, but I've been through worse. I got arrested for reading Remember, I Can Handle Some Bad Press." The next morning, Evelyn held a press conference on the Capitol steps. Her statement was brief and painful. "Yesterday, I made serious accusations against Governor Hart based on a document I believed proved his involvement in a quota system. After consulting with legal experts and reviewing the full context of that document, I realized I overreached in my conclusions. The memo I presented was part of a policy review process and does not prove the governor authorized or implemented a quota system. I apologize to Governor Hart for the damage my statements may have caused to his reputation. While I stand by my criticism of the Riverside Corrections contract and the quota system that harmed my constituents, I was wrong to implicate the governor personally without more substantial proof. She didn't take questions. She just walked away while reporters shouted after her. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Her political allies distanced themselves. Progressive groups called her reckless. Conservative outlets mocked her. Social media was merciless. By noon, there were calls for her resignation. By evening, 3 members of her own party had publicly criticized her. Marcus came to her office with resignation in his eyes. "Senator, your approval rating dropped 23 points in 6 hours. The party leadership wants you to step down from the Criminal Justice Reform Committee. Your donors are jumping ship." "Good," Evelyn said. "Let them. In 3 days, they'll all be apologizing. And if the feds don't deliver, if something goes wrong, then I go down as the senator who destroyed her career trying to fight corruption. I can live with that. Can you?" Marcus nodded slowly. "Yeah, I can." That night, Evelyn drove to Oakland alone. Marcus had argued Thomas had protested, but she'd been firm. The anonymous source had been clear. Come alone or don't come at all. The industrial district near the port was exactly the kind of place where bad things happened. Abandoned warehouses, broken streetlights, the smell of salt water and rust. Evelyn parked her car and walked toward the address she'd been given her hand on the pepper spray in her pocket. A figure emerged from the shadows. Male average height, wearing a baseball cap pulled low. He gestured for her to follow him into a warehouse. "This is insane," Evelyn muttered to herself, but she followed anyway. Inside the warehouse was dark, except for a single light hanging from the ceiling, and standing under that light was a man she recognized from Rebecca Thompson's photos. Officer James Thompson was alive. He looked older than his pictures, with gray in his hair and lines in his face that hadn't been there 3 years ago, but his eyes were the same, kind and haunted. "Senator Washington," he said, "I'm sorry about the cloak and dagger, but I needed to meet you before everything goes down. The Fed said you were in witness protection." "I am, but they don't know I'm here. They think I'm in a safe house in Nevada. I slipped away because I needed to look you in the eye and tell you something they won't tell you." Evelyn felt ice in her veins. "What?" "The Feds are planning to offer Hart a deal. They want him to flip on the private prison executives and the lobbying firm. In exchange, Hart gets probation and house arrest. No jail time." "That's impossible. Morrison promised me for innocence." "Morrison is a good prosecutor, but she reports to people in Washington who care more about dismantling the private prison industry than punishing individual politicians. Hart has information they want, so they're willing to let him walk." Evelyn felt like she'd been punched. After everything he's done, after all the lives he's destroyed? That's how the system works, Senator. You know that. The powerful protect each other. Hart will give up some executives, they'll go to prison. Hart will resign in disgrace, but avoid jail, and in 5 years, he'll be a consultant making millions. Meanwhile, people like Shanice Coleman will still be fighting to get their lives back. "Then why are you telling me this? What am I supposed to do about it?" Thompson pulled out a flash drive. "Everything the Feds have, I have, plus some things they don't have. This drive contains proof that Hart personally ordered Thompson's disappearance. Not just the pilot program, but specific communications showing he knew I was being targeted. If you release this before the indictments come down, the Feds can't offer him a deal. Public pressure will force them to prosecute him fully." Evelyn stared at the flash drive. "If I do that, I'll be interfering with a federal investigation. I could go to jail." "Yes," Thompson said simply, "but Hart would too. Real jail, federal prison, 20 years minimum. The question is, what matters more to you, your career or justice?" "That's not fair." "No, it's not. Nothing about this is fair. I've been dead for 3 years, Senator. Dead to my sister, dead to my friends, dead to the life I had. All because I tried to do the right thing. And now I'm telling you that the system we both believed in is about to let the man responsible walk free. So yeah, it's not fair, but it's the truth." Evelyn took the flash drive. Her hand was shaking. "If I do this, I destroy any chance of working with the Feds. Morrison will never trust me again. I'll be charged with obstruction." "Probably," Thompson agreed. "But you'll also make sure that everyone who suffered because of this system gets real justice. Not political justice, not expedient justice. Real justice." "Why don't you release it yourself?" "Because I'm officially dead. If I come forward now, it blows the entire federal case. Everyone walks. But you're already public. You've already been the face of this fight. If you release it, the Feds can still move forward with most of their case. They'll just have to prosecute Hart too." Evelyn looked at the flash drive in her hand. It was so small, just a piece of plastic and metal. But it held the power to end a governor's career, and possibly her own. "What's on here exactly?" "Emails between Hart and Drake discussing the need to neutralize me. Phone records showing Hart called the police chief the day before I disappeared. Financial records showing Hart received $200,000 from the lobbying firm 1 week after I went into hiding. And a recorded conversation between Hart and a private security contractor discussing permanent solutions to political problems. That last one is what will bury him." "Jesus," Evelyn whispered. "Yeah, so now you have a choice, Senator. Do you trust the system to work, or do you make sure it works?" Evelyn closed her fist around the flash drive. "If I release this, what happens to you?" "I stay dead, at least officially. The Feds will be furious, but they can't expose me without destroying their own case. So I stay in protection, finish my testimony, and then disappear for real. Maybe get a new life somewhere. Maybe get to be James Thompson again someday. And your sister will finally know I'm alive. That's enough." Evelyn put the flash drive in her pocket. "I need time to think about this." "You have 24 hours, Thompson said. "After that, the Feds move and the window closes. Whatever you decide, Senator, thank you. For fighting. For not backing down even when they tried to humiliate you. People like you give people like me hope that this system can still work." He disappeared into the shadows. Evelyn stood alone under the single light, feeling the weight of the flash drive in her pocket like a stone. She drove home in silence, her mind spinning through scenarios. Release the information and guarantee Hart faces real justice, but destroy her relationship with the feds and possibly face criminal charges herself. Or trust Morrison and the DOJ to do the right thing, even though Thompson was certain they'd cut a deal. When she got home, Maya was asleep on the couch again. Evelyn covered her with a blanket and went to her office. She plugged in the flash drive and started reading. Thompson wasn't exaggerating. The evidence was damning. Email after email showed Hart coordinating the cover-up of Thompson's disappearance. Phone records placed him in contact with the police chief at crucial moments. Financial records showed payments that could only be bribes. And the recorded conversation, Evelyn listened to it 3 times, her stomach churning with each playback. Hart's voice smooth and calm. "We have a problem. Officer Thompson is planning to go public with the pilot program data. We need this handled permanently." A man's voice she didn't recognize. Permanently, as in Hart, use your imagination, but it needs to look natural, an accident, depression, something that doesn't raise questions. The other voice, "That's going to cost extra." Hart, "I don't care about the cost, I care about results. Can you handle it or not?" The other voice, "Consider it handled." Evelyn stopped the recording. Her hands were shaking. This wasn't just corruption, this was conspiracy to commit murder. Thompson had survived, had gone into hiding before they could get to him, but Hart didn't know that. As far as Hart knew, he'd ordered a hit on a police officer. This evidence couldn't be buried in a plea deal. It had to be public. She looked at the clock. 3:17 a.m. In less than 48 hours, the feds would move. If she was going to act, it had to be now. She called Marcus. He answered on the second ring, his voice thick with sleep. "Senator, what's wrong?" "I need you to set up a press conference tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., every media outlet, national coverage." "What, Senator? We just apologized to Hart. If you backtrack now." "I'm not backtracking. I'm finishing this. Get Thomas too. We're releasing everything." "Everything? What everything?" "You'll see tomorrow. Just trust me, Marcus. One more time. Trust me." She hung up and started preparing her statement. She wrote for 2 hours, crafting every word carefully. This wasn't about politics anymore. This wasn't about her career. This was about making sure that when the story of this fight was told, it ended with justice, not compromise. At 5:30 a.m., her phone rang. It was Morrison. "Senator Washington, I just got word you're planning another press conference. I'm strongly advising you not to do that. You could jeopardize months of work." "Attorney General, with all due respect, I'm not working for you. I'm working for the people who've been hurt by this system, and they deserve to know the whole truth." "Senator, if you release information we've deemed classified as part of an ongoing investigation, then charge me, add me to the indictments, but I'm not staying silent while Hart cuts a deal to save himself." There was a long pause. Then Morrison's voice changed, became almost sad. "You know, don't you, about the deal?" "I know." "Senator, that deal ensures we can dismantle the entire private prison network. Hart's testimony is crucial." "Hart ordered a hit on a police officer. You're going to let that slide for testimony about some executives." Another pause. "How did you? We don't have evidence of that." "You do now, or you will in about 4 hours when I release it to the public." "Senator Washington, you're making a serious mistake." "No, Attorney General. I'm making sure that justice actually means something. See you at the press conference." She hung up before Morrison could respond. At 9:45 a.m., Evelyn stood in front of the Capitol building for the 3rd time in 3 days. Behind her were Marcus and Thomas. Shanice Coleman had wanted to be there to her, but Evelyn had told her to stay home while with her daughter. The feds had expedited the reunification after Evelyn's apology, and she wasn't going to risk that. The press corps looked confused. Yesterday, she'd apologized. Today she was back. What was happening? At exactly 10 a.m., Evelyn stepped up to the microphone. "Yesterday I apologized to Governor Hart. I said I'd overreached in my accusations. I want to be clear about something. That apology was a lie. I was asked by federal prosecutors to walk back my statements as part of their investigation. I agreed because I believed it would serve the greater good. But I've since learned that the federal government is planning to offer Governor Hart a plea deal that would allow him to avoid prison in exchange for testimony against others." The press corps erupted with questions. Evelyn held up her hand. "I have new evidence that I'm releasing today that proves Governor Hart didn't just authorize a quota system. He ordered the assassination of Officer James Thompson, the police officer who tried to expose that system. Officer Thompson survived and has been in witness protection for 3 years. But Governor Hart doesn't know that, As far as Hart knows, he had a cop killed to protect his corruption. She held up the flash drive. This contains emails, phone records, financial documents, and a recorded conversation of Governor Hart explicitly ordering a hit. I'm releasing all of it to the press right now. Copies are being distributed as I speak. The public deserves to know exactly who they elected, and the federal prosecutors need to know that there will be no sweetheart deals. Not for this, not ever. The rest of the press conference was chaos. Reporters shouting questions, camera flashes everywhere. Marcus trying to maintain order while Thomas distributed USB drives with copies of all the evidence. Evelyn's phone was ringing non-stop. Morrison calling, the governor's office calling, even her own party leadership calling. She ignored all of it because she'd done what she came to do. She'd told the truth, all of it, regardless of the cost. And as she walked away from those microphones, she felt something she hadn't felt since the day she was arrested. Freedom. Not from consequences, those were coming, she knew. Morrison would be furious. The feds might charge her with obstruction. Her political career was probably over, but she was free from compromise, free from calculation, free from the weight of staying silent while injustice continued. That afternoon, Governor Hart held his own press conference. He denied everything, called Evelyn's evidence fabricated, threatened lawsuits, but his voice was shaking. His eyes were wild. He knew she had him. By evening, 3 members of Hart's own party had called for his resignation. By midnight, the state legislature had announced impeachment proceedings. And at 2:37 a.m., the FBI raided Hart's offices, his home, and his campaign headquarters. The deal was off. Justice was on. The FBI raids happened so fast that by the time most people woke up the next morning, Governor Hart's entire operation had been dismantled. Evelyn watched the news coverage from her kitchen coffee growing cold in her hands while Maya sat beside her recording everything on her phone. "Mom, you did this," Maya whispered. "You actually took down a governor." "We did this," Evelyn corrected. "Everyone who told their story. Everyone who refused to stay silent. I just made sure the world was listening." Her phone rang. It was Morrison, and Evelyn knew this conversation was going to be painful. "Senator Washington, you just destroyed 6 months of careful investigation. Hart's lawyers are already claiming evidence tampering. His people are saying you fabricated the recording. Do you understand what you've done?" "I understand perfectly, Attorney General. I made sure that Hart couldn't buy his way out of justice. How's that sit with you?" Morrison's voice was ice. "You're being subpoenaed to appear before a grand jury. The Justice Department is opening an obstruction investigation into your conduct. You obtained classified evidence and released it without authorization. That's a federal crime." "Then charge me. Put me on trial. Let a jury hear exactly why I did what I did. I'll take that fight any day." "This isn't a game, Senator." "No, it's not. It's people's lives. And I'm not going to apologize for refusing to let Hart escape accountability. You wanted to use him to get to the private prison executives. I wanted to make sure he faced consequences for ordering someone's murder. We have different priorities." Morrison was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, tired. "For what it's worth, Senator, I understand why you did it. If I'd been in your position, I might have done the same thing. But that doesn't change the legal reality. You broke federal law. I have to pursue this." "I know," Evelyn said. "Do what you have to do." After hanging up, Evelyn sat with her daughter in silence. The enormity of what she'd done was settling in. She'd won the battle, but the war wasn't over. Hart would fight, Drake would fight, and now the federal government was coming after her too. "Mom, are you scared?" Maya asked. "Terrified," Evelyn admitted. "But fear doesn't change what's right. It just makes it harder." Marcus arrived an hour later with a folder full of documents and a grim expression. "Senator, we need to talk about your legal situation. I've been consulting with lawyers all morning. The obstruction charges are serious. You could face up to 5 years in federal prison if convicted." "I know the stakes, Marcus." "Do you? Because your political career is over either way. If you're convicted, obviously. But even if you're acquitted, no one in this state will touch you. You've alienated the party leadership, the governor's office, the federal prosecutors. You're radioactive." Evelyn smiled sadly. "Then I guess it's a good thing I didn't do this for political gain." Thomas knocked and entered without waiting for permission. His face was flushed with excitement. "Senator, you need to see this. The recording you released, audio forensics experts are already confirming it's authentic. Hart's people tried to claim it was doctored, but 3 independent labs have verified it's real. And there's more. The DOJ just announced they're expanding their investigation. They're looking at similar schemes in 12 other states. Your press conference didn't just take down Hart. It exposed a national conspiracy." Evelyn felt something loosen in her chest. Vindication, maybe, or just exhaustion. How many people potentially affected, she asked. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. Every state with private prison contracts and suspicious arrest rate increases. The FBI is forming a task force. And Officer Thompson, still in protection. But I got a message from him through a secure channel. He says thank you. He says you gave him his life back. Before Evelyn could respond, her phone rang again. This time it was Shanice Coleman, and she was crying. Senator, they just brought Jasmine home, my baby. She's here. She's really here. They expedited everything. She's in my arms right now, and I can't even... Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. Shanice, I'm so happy for you. You did this. You fought for us when no one else would. How do I thank you for giving me my daughter back? You don't thank me. You just love her and live your life. That's enough. After the call ended, Evelyn sat with her face in her hands. Maya hugged her from the side. That's why you did it, Maya said softly. That's why it was worth it. The next 3 days were a whirlwind. Hart's impeachment proceedings began in the state legislature. Drake was arrested on corruption charges. Patricia Vance was indicted. Officer Sullivan and Margaret Thornton both faced criminal charges. The entire system that had enabled the quota arrests was crumbling. But the cost to Evelyn was mounting. The State Bar Association opened an ethics investigation. Her own party censured her for reckless conduct. Campaign donors demanded refunds. Her political allies became strangers overnight. On the 4th day after her final press conference, Evelyn received a call from an unexpected source. Former President Robert Chen wanted to meet with her privately. She drove to San Francisco to a small restaurant in Chinatown where Chen was waiting in a private room. He was in his 70s now, but still sharp-eyed and commanding. Senator Washington, thank you for coming. I've been following your situation closely. Mr. President, with respect, if you're here to tell me, I handled this wrong. I'm here to tell you that you handled it exactly right, and I'm here to help. Evelyn was stunned. Sir, I spent 8 years in the White House trying to reform the criminal justice system. I had limited success because the political will wasn't there, but you've done in 2 weeks what I couldn't do in 8 years. You've made this issue impossible to ignore. You've given a face and a story to systemic injustice, and you've proven that one person with courage can change everything. I'm facing federal charges, Mr. President. My career is over. Your political career might be over, but your real work is just beginning. I want to hire you to run a new criminal justice reform foundation I'm launching. National scope, unlimited budget, complete autonomy. We'll fight these cases in every state. We'll represent victims. We'll push legislation, and we'll make sure what happened to you and to people like Shanice Coleman never happens again. Evelyn stared at him. Why me? Because you didn't calculate the political cost before doing the right thing. Because you were willing to sacrifice everything for justice. That's not a politician, Senator. That's a leader, and leaders are exactly what this movement needs. I need to think about this. Of course, but Senator, don't think too long. The world is watching what happens to you next. If you disappear, if you let them silence you, it sends a message that fighting the system isn't worth it. But if you continue fighting, if you show that you can't be broken, you'll inspire a generation. The meeting with Chen was still fresh in her mind when Evelyn returned home to find federal marshals waiting outside her house. Senator Evelyn Washington, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and unlawful disclosure of classified information. Marcus had warned her this was coming, but the reality of it still felt surreal. The handcuffs clicked around her wrists for the second time in 2 weeks. But this time she wasn't scared. She was ready. The marshals were professional and courteous. They read her rights, transported her to the federal courthouse, and processed her through the system with efficiency. By evening, she was standing before a federal magistrate for her arraignment. The courtroom was packed. Reporters, activists, supporters, and curiosity seekers filled every seat. Maya sat in the front row next to Marcus, her face set with determination. The prosecutor was a young woman named Sarah Chen, who laid out the charges with clinical precision. Your Honor, the defendant obtained classified evidence related to an ongoing federal investigation and released it to the media without authorization. This action compromised investigative techniques, potentially endangered witnesses, and interfered with the administration of justice. The government requests that the defendant be held without bail pending trial. Evelyn's attorney, a civil rights lawyer named David Martinez, who'd volunteered to represent her pro bono, stood up immediately. Your Honor, Senator Washington is a sitting state senator with no prior criminal record. She has deep ties to this community and no flight risk. The charges against her stem from her attempts to ensure that a corrupt governor faced appropriate accountability. Holding her without bail would be a gross miscarriage of justice. The magistrate, an older black woman named Judge Patricia Williams, looked over her glasses at both attorneys. "Mr. Martinez, your client did release classified information. That's a serious charge." "Yes, Your Honor, but my client released that information because she had credible evidence that federal prosecutors were planning to offer the subject of that evidence a plea deal that would allow him to escape appropriate punishment for ordering the assassination of a police officer. She acted not to obstruct justice, but to ensure it was served." "That's not her decision to make," Prosecutor Chen argued. "We have processes. We have procedures. She doesn't get to decide how federal investigations proceed." Judge Williams turned to Evelyn. "Senator Washington, do you have anything to say?" Evelyn stood. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand I broke federal law. I understand there will be consequences. But I also understand that sometimes the law and justice are not the same thing. I was arrested 2 weeks ago for reading in a library. That was legal. It was also wrong. When I discovered that the system responsible for my arrest went all the way to the governor's office and that the governor was going to escape real accountability through political maneuvering, I had a choice. I could trust the system to work, or I could make sure it worked. I chose the latter. I'd make the same choice again." The courtroom was silent. Judge Williams studied Evelyn for a long moment. "Senator Washington, you've put me in a difficult position. On one hand, you did break federal law. On the other hand, your actions expose corruption at the highest levels of state government. I'm going to grant bail, but with strict conditions. You'll surrender your passport. You'll wear an ankle monitor. And you'll refrain from any contact with witnesses in the federal investigation. Bail is set at $50,000. Marcus paid the bail within an hour, using funds from supporters who'd started a legal defense fund. By evening, Evelyn was home with an ankle monitor and a court date set for 6 weeks later. The trial preparation consumed the next month. Martinez built a defense around necessity and public interest. He gathered character witnesses, expert testimony on governmental corruption, and prepared Evelyn to take the stand. But the real drama happened outside the courtroom. Hart's impeachment trial concluded with his removal from office by a vote of 38-2. He was the first California governor to be impeached and removed in state history. Drake pleaded guilty to corruption charges and agreed to testify against the private prison executives. Riverside Corrections lost contracts in 7 states and filed for bankruptcy. And the FBI task force made arrests in 9 states, dismantling the entire quota system network. Thomas published a comprehensive database of every person arrested under quota systems nationwide. The number was staggering: 47,000 people over 5 years. 47,000 lives disrupted, damaged, or destroyed to meet profit margins. Civil rights organizations filed a massive class action lawsuit seeking compensation for victims. Shanice Coleman was named as a lead plaintiff. The case was expected to take years, but had the potential to result in billions in settlements. And through it all, Evelyn prepared for her own trial, knowing that the outcome would determine not just her future, but the message sent to anyone else who dared to challenge systemic corruption. The trial began on a Monday morning in late November. The courtroom was even more packed than the arraignment. Media from around the world covered it. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Yes, the information was classified. Yes, Evelyn obtained it through unauthorized means. Yes, she released it knowing it would interfere with an ongoing investigation. Martinez didn't dispute any of those facts. Instead, he argued that Evelyn's actions were necessary to prevent a greater injustice. When Officer James Thompson testified via video link from an undisclosed location, the courtroom went silent. He explained the pilot program, his attempts to expose it, and Hart's order to have him killed. "Senator Washington saved my life by releasing that recording," Thompson said. "If Hart had been given a plea deal, he would have had the resources and connections to find me eventually. By forcing him to face full prosecution, she ensured my safety and the safety of my family. What she did wasn't obstruction, it was protection." Shanice Coleman testified about losing her daughter and nearly losing her sanity during 6 months in jail for using a library. She looked directly at the jury. "Senator Washington gave me my baby back. She gave me my life back. If following the rules means letting people like Governor Hart walk free while people like me lose everything, then maybe the rules are wrong." Rebecca Thompson testified about her brother's disappearance and the years of fear and uncertainty. Grace Williams testified about decades of watching her community be targeted by discriminatory policing. One by one, victims of the quota system told their stories. When Evelyn took the stand, Martinez walked her through every decision, every choice, every moment that led to her releasing the flash drive. "Senator Washington, did you know releasing that information could result in federal charges against you? Yes? Did you do it anyway? Yes? Why?" Evelyn looked at the jury. 12 faces diverse in age and race and background, all watching her intently. Because I took an oath when I became a senator. I swore to support and defend the Constitution, not to protect political careers, not to preserve institutional relationships, to defend the Constitution. And the Constitution promises equal justice under law, not justice for people with titles and lawyers, not justice dependent on political calculations. Equal justice. When I learned that Governor Hart was going to escape accountability for ordering someone's murder because it was politically expedient, I knew that oath required me to act, even if it cost me everything. The prosecution's cross-examination was aggressive. They pointed out that Evelyn wasn't a federal prosecutor, wasn't privy to all the investigative details, wasn't qualified to make decisions about plea agreements. You took the law into your own hands, didn't you, Senator? No, I put the truth into the public's hands. There's a difference. You decided you knew better than experienced federal prosecutors. I decided that ordering someone's murder should result in prison time. I don't think that's a controversial position. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Closing arguments were passionate on both sides. The prosecutor argued that no one was above the law, including well-intentioned senators. Martinez argued that sometimes breaking a law is necessary to serve a higher justice. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Evelyn spent those days at home with Maya trying to prepare for either outcome. If convicted, she'd face sentencing that could include prison time. If acquitted, she'd still be censured by her own party and likely face recall efforts. On the 3rd day, word came that the jury had reached a verdict. Evelyn dressed in her best suit and drove to the courthouse with Marcus and Maya. The courtroom was so packed that people stood in the hallways hoping to hear the outcome. Judge Williams called the court to order. Has the jury reached a verdict, Bonbon? The foreperson, an older white man who'd been a teacher for 40 years, stood up. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of obstruction of justice, how do you find? Not guilty. The courtroom erupted. Judge Williams banged her gavel, but the noise continued. Maya was crying. Marcus had his head in his hands. Evelyn felt like she couldn't breathe. On the charge of unlawful disclosure of classified information, how do you find it not guilty? This time, Judge Williams didn't even try to control the courtroom. The celebration was too loud, too joyful, too necessary. Evelyn stood there, tears streaming down her face as people she'd never met hugged her and thanked her and told her she'd changed their lives. When order was finally scarcely restored, Judge Williams addressed the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, this was not an easy case. The law was clear, the defendant's actions were clear, and yet you found her not guilty. Would the foreperson explain the jury's reasoning for the record? The teacher stood again. Your Honor, we understood the legal arguments. We understood that technically Senator Washington broke federal law, but we also understood that sometimes the law serves injustice instead of preventing it. We believed that Senator Washington acted not to obstruct justice, but to ensure it. And we believed that convicting her would send a message that challenging corruption isn't worth the risk. We couldn't in good conscience send that message. Judge Williams nodded slowly. Thank you. Senator Washington, you're free to go. The ankle monitor will be removed immediately. This court is adjourned. The aftermath was chaotic and beautiful. Reporters surrounded Evelyn on the courthouse steps. Supporters chanted her name. Shanice Coleman pushed through the crowd with her daughter and hugged Evelyn so tight she could barely breathe. You won? Shanice whispered. We all won. That evening, Evelyn stood in front of cameras one more time, not to defend herself, not to accuse anyone, just to speak. Today, 12 citizens looked at a system that prioritized procedure over justice and said no. They understood that sometimes following the rules means enabling injustice. Sometimes the right thing to do is the hard thing, the costly thing, the thing that might destroy your career or your reputation or your life. But it's still the right thing. She paused, gathering her thoughts. 2 weeks ago, I was arrested for reading in a library. That arrest led me down a path that exposed corruption at every level of government. It cost me my political career. It nearly cost me my freedom. But it also freed 47,000 people from unjust criminal records. It brought down a corrupt governor. It dismantled a system that treated human beings as profit centers. And it reminded me why I went into public service in the first place. Her voice strengthened. I'm announcing today that I won't seek re-election to the state senate. Instead, I'm accepting a position with the Chen Foundation for Criminal Justice Reform. We'll be fighting these cases nationwide, representing victims, changing laws, making sure what happened in Riverside never happens anywhere else. This fight isn't over, it's just beginning. And I'm not stopping until every person who was arrested under a quota system has their record cleared, their life restored, and their dignity recognized. She looked directly into the camera. To everyone who's been arrested for existing in spaces where someone decided you didn't belong, to everyone who's been targeted because of your skin color or your economic status, to everyone who's been told that fighting the system is pointless, I'm here to tell you it's not pointless. It's hard, it's costly, but it's not pointless. We can win, we did win, and we're going to keep winning until justice means the same thing for everyone. The press conference ended. Evelyn walked down the courthouse steps with Maya on one side and Marcus on the other. Thomas waited at the bottom with a laptop showing the real-time social media response. The hashtag #JusticeForAll was trending worldwide. Ms. Washington, Thomas corrected himself with a smile. You just inspired about 10 million people, maybe more. Good, Evelyn said. We're going to need all of them. 3 months later, Evelyn stood in a small courtroom in Riverside County. Judge Williams had agreed to oversee the expungement hearings for all victims of the quota system. One by one, people stood before her and had their records cleared. When it was Shanice Coleman's turn, she brought her daughter Jasmine with her. The little girl was 5 now, shy and beautiful, holding tight to her mother's hand. Ms. Coleman, Judge Williams said gently, your arrest record has been expunged. The state of California offers its formal apology for the injustice you suffered. And on behalf of this court, I want you to know that what happened to you should never have happened. I'm sorry. Shanice was crying too hard to speak. She just nodded and held her daughter close. After all the hearings were complete, Evelyn walked outside into the afternoon sun, the same sun that had been shining the day she was arrested. But everything was different now. Her phone buzzed. A text from Officer Thompson, who was still in protection but had been able to reconnect with his sister. Thank you for giving me my life back, for giving all of us our lives back. You're a hero, Senator. Evelyn smiled and deleted the message. She wasn't a hero. She was just a woman who'd been arrested for reading and decided that wasn't acceptable. Everything else had followed from that one moment of refusal. She thought about all the books in that library, all the stories of people who'd fought impossible battles and won, all the proof that one person really could change the world if they were brave enough to try. Maya pulled up in her car. She was 17 now, already planning to study law and civil rights, already planning to continue the fight. Ready to go home, Mom? Yeah, baby, I'm ready. As they drove away from the courthouse, Evelyn looked back one last time at the place where it had all started. The Riverside Public Library stood quiet in the afternoon light, its doors open to anyone who wanted to read, anyone who wanted to learn, anyone who wanted to fight for something better. Evelyn Washington had walked into that library as a senator doing research. She'd been dragged out in handcuffs as a suspected criminal, and she'd emerged from the whole ordeal as exactly what the world needed most. A reminder that the system only works when people refuse to let it fail, that justice only exists when people fight for it. That change only happens when someone is brave enough to say enough. Her arrest had been meant to intimidate her, to put her in her place, to remind her that some people didn't belong in certain spaces. Instead, it had freed her to do the most important work of her life, because the truth she'd learned was simple and powerful. Knowledge was power, and today power had finally met truth, and truth had won.